This is the week after BlackHat, so you know what that means? Upside down episodes. That's right, for the next few weeks, we're going to start off with a news segment and then air the interviews we filmed at BlackHat in the following two segments. So, this week in the enterprise security news, it continues to be a buyer's market with three acquisitions and a few rumors. One of those rumors is that Trend Micro is looking for a buyer after nearly 40 years. And CrowdStrike is looking to do a $1 billion acquisition. We talk patchless patching, gatekeeping in InfoSec, cybersecurity software quality problem, finally finalized post quantum standards, layoffs, spying with lasers, moon GPS. Then in the second segment, Jeff Mann interviews Rakesh Nair, Senior VP of Engineering and Product at Devo, about the company's new workflow enhancements. Then Jeff interviews Rekha Shenoy, the CEO of Backbox. I hope I'm saying these names right, about continuous vulnerability remediation. Then for the third segment, Jeff Mann interviews Marty Momjian, EVP of Services at Simperis, about operational resilience in healthcare. And then finally, Jeff talks to Brett Stone Gross, Senior Director of Threat Intelligence at Zscaler, about a record-breaking ransom payment. So those are all videos from BlackHat that we're going to air after the news segment here, and all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. If your organization is ready to enhance cyber resilience, we have important insights for you. The 2024 Level Blue Futures Report sheds light on how rapid computing changes affect IT visibility. Our research reveals that while IT leaders see positive outcomes, 85% acknowledge increased risk. In this report, we identify the barriers to cyber resilience, the challenges impacting cybersecurity, and the business contexts that reveal operational issues. You'll also discover what's on the horizon and 5 essential steps for prioritizing cyber resilience. Get your complimentary copy of this crucial research today. Visit securityweekly.com/levelblue. Cybersecurity simplified. Graylog elevates enterprise-level cybersecurity through its comprehensive SIEM, centralized log management, and API security solutions. Built on the Graylog platform, Graylog Security combines SIEM, security analytics, threat detection, and incident response capabilities. Unlike traditional SIEMs, which offer complex and costly setups, Graylog Security simplifies security and operational challenges with an optimal blend of licensing, people, and infrastructure costs. To see a demo, visit securityweekly.com/Graylog. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy National Relaxation Day. This is episode 372, recorded on Thursday, August 14th, 2024. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Admiral of ASPM, the Captain of Content, Katie Teitler-Santullo. How are you doing, Katie?
I am well. I think you're still relaxing a little bit more than I am in general, but I'm feeling pretty good today. It's all good.
I have a lot of relaxation incentive. I only have to look out the window and look at the ocean.
Yeah, I think the next person you're going to introduce probably has the worst stress of us all because of where he's coming from, as well as many of our listeners and watchers.
Yeah, you didn't go to BlackHat, right?
Did not. No, I avoided the 1,000-degree weather and the chaos.
Yeah. And the Rona.
Well, yes, that too. That too. Everybody I know is, I'm a little sniffly. I'm like, give it a couple days.
Yeah. Also joining us, the Dean of Detection, the Knight of Newsletters, Darwin Salazar. How you doing, Darwin?
Howdy. I've had better days. I am on the rebound from what some are calling Def COVID, a blend of DefCon and COVID.
Def COVID.
But yeah, having spent the past week in Vegas, just overstimulated by slot machines, a bunch of security talks, vendor booths, happy hours. I would love to actually honor National Relaxation Day. Not sure if I will get the chance to today, since it's only Thursday, and things got to keep trucking along. But I'm feeling better than I was at the beginning of the week, and I would mark that as a win. So thanks for asking, and of course you're in Brazil. So how are you doing, Adrian?
I'm doing pretty good. This is the last full day here in Brazil. I fly back tomorrow. So this is, was this day 28, day 29? She's not listening. But
silly security podcast. I don't need to listen.
almost a full month here, and I definitely had relaxing days. This was not one of them. I had 2 advisory calls today, monthly cybersecurity canon meeting, prep call for an upcoming interview on this podcast and the podcast itself. So, yeah, Thursdays have been busy for me, even in paradise. So, but yeah, I've had plenty of relaxation over the last month, so I can't complain.
And delicious fruit. I'm still jealous of the delicious fruit that you were posting.
A lot of delicious fruit juice. That's a big thing here in Brazil. A lot of good cheeses. A lot of caipirinhas. Good stuff. A lot of cachaça. Yeah. All right, so we are doing the news, and we've got some interesting stuff here. I have a few items I've got earmarked just for Darwin here. And you know what? Let's start there, Darwin. Talk to me about patchless patching. I think you mentioned that this is your favorite thing coming out of the BlackHat, out of the expo hall.
Right. So this one was interesting. I don't like to point fingers at vendors or whatever the case may be. But as I was walking the Black Hat Expo floor, I saw some marketing copy that read patchless patching. And so if we think about marketing, one of the tasks or one of the things that good marketing is supposed to do is make people pause and grab their attention.
Yeah.
And cause them to think. And so, in that sense, it did achieve all of those objectives. But when I think about the technical implementation or technical considerations that relate to patchless patching, I'm like, well, how the hell can that even be possible? It's like
Mhm.
smokeless cigar or like waterless swimming.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily like make sense in my mind. And when we boil it down to the root of what patching is, it's applying an update to like a vulnerability within software or hardware to address that vulnerability. And so how can one patch something without modifying that current state that is vulnerable of that piece of software or hardware? I haven't found the answer to that, which leads me to believe, like, I don't know, are they playing jokes on people? But it seems, Adrian, you have some,
I can
and
add some
Katie,
context.
maybe you guys have some thoughts on this, or like want to take the opposite side. I don't know.
So I do have some context to this. Over 20 years ago, we had patchless patching. Back then, they called it virtual patching. And the idea was if you couldn't put the patch in place, or if you needed to buy time before you could put the patch in place, you would somehow mitigate that exploit. And there are a couple different ways of doing that. I've seen people do it on the endpoint where you actually load in a DLL into every running process and it looks for an attempt to exploit a vulnerability and it stops that exploit. So Cyvera, which Palo Alto acquired 10 years ago, originally did this before they turned it into a full-blown antivirus EPP EDR solution. And we did it with WAFs over 20 years ago, where it would if you knew how the exploit worked, you could have your web application firewall block those exploit attempts before you were able to actually patch or fix the vulnerability. So that's my historical context for it. But looking into this, it looks like there's not a good explanation for how they're doing it. They mentioned using scripts. It sounds like they're looking at each individual vulnerability and saying, is there a way to mitigate this? Like maybe if you change the configuration, it's not exploitable or something like that. And so it sounds like they're just going around like reconfiguring things on the fly, which could break things. Like some of the examples they gave, specifically one of the examples they gave, I remember thinking, doesn't this break all containers? Like this sounds kind of dangerous to just run around and reconfigure people's machines to do patchless patching.
Yeah, I agree. I think the concept is great and compelling, but to Darwin's point, it feels marketing heavy to me. And it
Mhm.
feels like either they've really thought about it and are marketing it not in the best way possible. I don't want to comment on that necessarily, but it's either that they have a really good solution and they're not telling people exactly what's going on, which is dangerous, right?
Which, why
Because
would you? Yeah,
why?
why?
Why would you do that? Or they just want this for attention because we've all seen vendors, and I'm from a vendor, so I guess I get to throw myself in the pot here, but vendors who promise things and then have absolutely nothing to show. I didn't go to BlackHat, but several of my colleagues did, and when they went to certain booths, they would talk to whomever was there and say, hey, can you show me this? And there were at least 3 prominent vendors, not necessarily in the space that I work in, so don't go guessing anybody, who told my colleagues that they couldn't show them the demo because they weren't familiar enough with the feature that was being advertised on the trade show floor.
Isn't that insane? How
So,
insane is that you would spend that much on a booth and not staff it with somebody who could show you a demo?
right. So either they rush to get it out the door and it's not fully baked, or it's just fluff, right? And I think whatever the scenario is, it's a dangerous precedent to solve because I know security and I know it's, very much, we're very fond of growing companies for hopeful acquisitions and big IPOs, but there are some good companies out there really, really trying to fix stuff. And it seems like those are fewer and farther between. And when we have marketing gimmicks, it just brings the trust level down. And when you bring the trust level down, you're going to start having executives pulling back from security budgets, not just tools. I don't mean tools, but people and processes and programs that help us when people are really trying to create something that's legit.
Yeah, so the vendor that claimed this mentions 2 different ways that they're doing patchless patching. One is the mitigation, which I mentioned, running a script that's going to reconfigure your system and, maybe it doesn't break anything, but, some of the examples I mentioned, I think are definitely going to break things. And the other is to isolate the system, which to me, that's not patchless patching at all. Like, again,
It's
that's another
stopgapping.
opportunity to break something. Like, this system, if it's running for a purpose. If you're going to isolate it on the network, you're you're going to break it. You're going to take away its purpose. So I don't think. I mean, the mitigations, yes, I think you could call that patchless patching. But then my question is, okay, for how many vulnerabilities can you do this out of the 130,000 that your product can find? 20? Like is it enough to really justify saying you have this as a feature? Because I wonder about that, because these mitigations are going to be unique for every single vulnerability. Are they really going through and writing a script one off for every single, for 20,000 CVEs or more? I'd be highly surprised if they're doing that.
And to Katie's point, like this type of marketing that is very attention grabby and not necessarily like rooted in like technical feasibility or prowess. This is what diminishes trust between vendors and CISOs or
Yeah.
security buyers. And so this type of conversation that we're having right now, it's not that we're pointing fingers, it's more so we're surfacing practices that are questionable to try and drive forward a more transparent type of culture within the vendor marketing space. And so I believe we've gotten better over the past 5 to 10 years. Like there's much less ambulance chasing when a say like a XZ backdoor happens or a log4j happens. Like there are less and less vendors saying like, hey, or even like let's say these snowflake breaches, like, hey, we could have stopped this. Of course, there's still that there are still those vendors who are kind of, I would excuse my French, call them asshats, that say like not rooted in like true technical truth, that say, hey, our stuff could have stopped this or we could have detected this, and it's like, dude, you're a like
Mhm.
DLP solution. How the hell would you have uncovered a software flaw?
Right.
And so that exists, and that definitely diminishes trust, and we're seeing less of that. So I think it's important for us to continue having these conversations and pointing out like gimmicky marketing.
Yeah,
So
and I mean that's one of the thing. It's part of my personal brand is calling out BS when we see it.
yep,
Because I think individuals and companies should be held accountable when they make these sorts of claims. Yeah, because it's you can only there's a reason vendors have trouble creating trust, and a big part of that is their own practices. So that's where I think vendors should start when trying to earn trust back. So
And I do want to jump in and defend marketers a little bit here, because I'm with you both.
mhm,
However, for a lot of marketing teams, the goals, because we talk about goals in all areas of business, right? The goals in marketing require them to get attention, and at most companies, getting that initial attention is a huge goal. And so they're sort of put in a place where they have to stand out. Now, I think some companies do take it too far where they're just not honest with their words or their
mhm,
presentations or whatever. But a lot of what happens in marketing is due to the pressures to meet certain numbers, to meet certain KPIs, to meet quotas. And so I think we have to rethink what constitutes good marketing. I don't mean just upend the whole apple cart, but we need to rethink what constitutes good marketing. Now, for an event like BlackHat, it's probably going to take a few sales because, let's be honest, BlackHat big, BlackHat expensive. But aside from BlackHat and RSA, for a lot of conferences, literally one sale can more than cover the cost of the conference. I'm not saying that's good ROI. You can't grow a business on a break even, but we
yeah.
have to look at how to market our companies differently without the hyperbolicism. Is that actually a word? I
Yeah,
don't know.
fake it till you make it.
Yeah, 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 exactly. The hyperbole. There we go. I know that's a word. We have to learn how to market without the hyperbole, and also figure out metrics that matter, metrics that work for the organization to get them where they need, so their sales teams can do their job.
Yeah, yeah. Do something actually impressive, and then market that. Okay,
It's
like
not
that.
easy. We all know it's not easy.
Table stakes though. You're going to start a company, like it's and there are solid strategies out there. Hire
Yep,
some researchers doing really cool work, you
yep.
know? Um, yeah. And it's funny. I've even seen vendors let go of researchers doing really cool work because that's the company's entire public persona becomes that researcher doing that cool work, and they don't want their image to be 100% dependent on that one person, which I get. But yeah, you see some interesting stuff. So yeah, it's not an easy problem, but that is the challenge that you adopt when you decide to jump into the fray with 4,000 other cybersecurity startups. All right, so since we're talking about vulnerabilities, and this is one that you could patchless patch. by disabling IPv6, which will probably break some things depending on how you use IPv6. Because there are certain things out there that only work over IPv6 these days, particularly IoT devices. Yeah, this was Katie. You sent this over. I don't actually have this in the show notes, but I am aware of this. I saw Matt Johansson publish something to Instagram yesterday about this, but it's a vulnerability in the Windows TCP/IP stack. Basically, with the correctly crafted IPv6 packet, you could have remote code execution on a Windows box, which seems insane. Like that's remote code execution with with a packet, like in 2024. That's I couldn't find I couldn't find really any details on this. I don't think like we know who discovered it. It looks like a Chinese firm out of Beijing is who's giving credit for it. But beyond that, I don't know any details of how easy it is to exploit. Like it's set to pretty easy. Looks like it's fairly easy to set it, but it takes a while to update Windows. So if an exploit gets into the wild for this, that would make a crazy worm.
Yeah, so I don't know much about it either because I found it as we were setting up for the podcast. But what it says under the FAQ is, how can an attacker exploit this vulnerability? An unauthenticated attacker could repeatedly send IPv6 packets that include specifically crafted packets to a Windows machine, which would enable remote code execution. Doesn't sound super complicated. There are some mitigations. There are some updates, patch. But aside from that, I don't know too much about it, but it's it feels like deja vu all over again.
Yeah, so for people listening or watching, this is CVE 2024 38063. So 38063 is the CVE on this, and I will add it to the show notes at some point, probably while we're talking, because that's how I roll. But yeah, not a whole lot of details on it. The fact that they say repeatedly send packets makes me think maybe it's a timing attack. Maybe it's not something that's super precise that works, the first time you execute it. Maybe you have to send a certain amount of packets. Maybe there's a little luck involved there. But like I said, we don't really know much about it at this point. There's no proof of concept that I've seen. I went out looking for it. I haven't seen any exploits. So anybody's guess at how bad this could be in the future. But the attack surface is pretty big. IPv6 is enabled by default on Windows and has been since like 2008.
Yeah.
We will probably hear more about this vulnerability moving forward as more details come to light. The bulletin board post by Microsoft does not have a lot of details on it, and that's probably by design because this vulnerability probably is tied to maybe some other flaws within Windows machines, and so they don't want to shine too much of a light on how this vulnerability was uncovered. And the other thing that I'll say is like Microsoft has been in the limelight a lot over the past couple of years, obviously with the Outlook stuff, the CrowdStrike outage, a bunch of recent Azure outages as well. And so it has not been a good month, quarter, year, or even beginning of the decade for Microsoft as it relates to flaws and vulnerabilities. So we'll see what comes out of it. Hopefully nothing bad, but it's absolutely alarming, I would say.
So I have a question for you guys. This isn't news. This is op-ed. I'm just going to take over the podcast here, Adrian.
Okay.
Go for it.
So we keep seeing these things happen, and I don't want to throw stones at Microsoft because let's face it, they are potentially the biggest target, right? Because they have such a big user base, install base.
Billions.
But
Yeah.
right, it's huge. So them dealing with an issue is a lot different than my company or any other quote big company. They are massive. So I don't want to take that away from them. But they do seem to have a heck of a lot of issues. And we were just talking about trust. And we go to the, platform versus best of breed product that we've been talking about. And a lot of people feel like, well, I'd rather settle for a Microsoft with so security that's easy to manage, easy to pay for, et cetera, et cetera. But where does this trust stop? Because we don't see people, there's no like rapid migration away from Microsoft, and yet these things keep happening. Where does it
Yeah.
stop?
How
Where
how
does
how
the
would you like what does that plan look like to migrate away from Microsoft, right? Like it's not a simple thing. It's interesting. In my cybersecurity book club meeting earlier today, somebody's talking about cybersecurity in Germany. They read a book that was specifically about how Germany handles cybersecurity, and they handle it at the government level. And one of the conclusions that Germany has come to is Microsoft is not to be trusted, and Microsoft products are basically not welcome in the German government. They've kind of broken these contracts and these deals and had so many security problems that Germany finally said, yeah, you know what, as a third party, you're too risky to do business with. So we've seen it happen at a government level. And we saw it happen with Snowden as well. After the Snowden revelations, the Brazilian government made a big show to rip out Cisco and American networking gear and went to, ironically, Huawei. And, like a lot of the competing stuff was with either Chinese or Nordic. So up in Norway, you've got a lot of options up there with Ericsson and Nokia, making some enterprise networking gear as well. So yeah, there is precedent for it. There's a precedent for getting fed up enough with Microsoft that you rip it all out.
Yeah, and it's it it's a pattern at this point.
I think that's fair to say.
I would say that if I'm a CIO or a CISO at a Fortune 500, and like the thought of moving some critical workloads over to another cloud provider, and moving away from Microsoft and Azure, it's probably a thought that comes to mind every time we see one of these vulnerabilities, breaches, in the headlines. So I just threw in this Slack channel between us two. There was a critical cross-tenant vulnerability discovered in an Azure AI health
Another
bot.
one. Yeah.
Another one. This one just came out 2 days ago. I wasn't familiar with the other one, but the fact that it's cross-tenant, say, what an attacker can access the AI health bot of multiple healthcare organizations based on one flaw. So this is pretty dangerous. And it seems like they're rushing things to market, which is what they agreed against after the CSRB review, where they mentioned like they would put security at the forefront and ties their executive team's bonuses to security. And yet here we are 3 to 5 months later with a flood of critical security vulnerabilities, right? I'll probably grow gray hairs keep talking about freaking Microsoft and their security practices, but it is pretty frustrating.
And you mentioned it. It is a pattern at this point. It looks like they are. It's the same thing that the CSRB called them out for, which is prioritizing pushing stuff to market quickly over security, over making sure that they're and not even just security, but just code quality in general. There've been a lot of services that really felt like beta. Yeah, I've used a lot of Microsoft products that were killed a couple months after they introduced them. Where it just felt very kind of shaky. The stuff they were throwing out into production. Like I remember when I first started taking advisory calls on Copilot and I was doing my research on it, I was going through the Microsoft documentation for Copilot, and there were literally placeholders for documentation in the published documentation that said, we need to write up something here, replace this with, the final documentation. Like there were like notes to themselves in the published documentation that got past any editors, if there were any editors. It felt
Wow.
like my employees were just like, given permission to just publish straight to to Microsoft.com or wherever they have the documentation, doc.microsoft.com. So yeah, very much getting the feeling that they're rushing stuff out to the detriment of their customers.
And until customers start, yeah, I know what I heard what you said about Germany, etc. But until they see a loss of revenue, they're just not going to stop, because people are, well, it is Microsoft. Okay, I'd rather deal with that than, Ishkabibble new company.
Well, I mean, Satya said, like they came out after that CSRB report and said, "Hey, we're going to do better," but we're not
But where's
seeing it
the
yet.
evidence?
Yeah, we're not seeing the evidence yet. And to be fair, like that was pretty recently, so I don't know how much time they need to ramp that up. But
I mean, to give you a comparison, every Monday morning I say I'm going to be better with my diet. It doesn't happen. Like, I promise myself and then I lie. So, and I'm not doing it to lie. I'm doing it because it's a good goal to have.
Yeah, but the breadth of the impact from that is one, maybe two people and two
Was
pets.
that a pun? Was that a pun? Adrian.
No, it wasn't intended to be. But yeah, over 1 billion customers.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot riding on this.
Right. So it shouldn't just be, our intent is. It should, put some effort behind your words
Put some meat
here.
behind it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, I'm adding all this stuff to the show notes. We're going to have 3 new things added to the show notes here, but that's good stuff, and I'm glad you guys brought it up. All right, where should we go next here? Darwin, you wanna talk about the BlackHat Innovators? What was the name of this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Innovators and Investors Summit. Yeah,
Okay.
Innovators and Investors Summit. I'll just call it I&I for short. I&I Summit. And so the day prior to BlackHat officially kicking off, there were a couple of summits, including the CISO Summit, the Omdia Analyst Summit, the AI Summit, and the Innovators and Investors Summit. And these are one-day, fully packed, like jam-packed schedule with leaders in that respective category. And so for the Innovators and Investors Summit, we had folks like Haroon, the founder of Thinks Canary. We had a bunch of pretty legendary investors from ranging from like John Sakota from Decibel to Sid Trivedi, and many investors in the security space were there as well. A lot of founders, the founder of Clarity, obviously all of the startup competition founders were there. So like Sunil Yu, Gadi Evron, the folks from Rad Security, Dry Run. It was pretty much like a who's who of founders and investors in the security space. And the panels were freaking stacked, man. The second panel, and the first one that I was able to attend actually had George Kurtz, the CEO of CrowdStrike, on it. And he was actually talking about gearing up a startup and getting it ready to go for its IPO, its initial public offering. And so that was pretty enlightening. I hope to one day take a company IPO. That's something that very few get to actually do. And so getting insights into it was pretty amazing. Another panel was the Building Trust with CISOs with Frederick Lee, CISO at Reddit, and John Flynn, VP of Security at DeepMind, and the CEO of Vanta. And obviously that one shined a light on how to build trust with CISOs and security buyers. Ultimately, that was for me the most enriching and like highest ROI activity that I did the entire week at BlackHat. And so I wrote up some notes on it. I found it to be fun and will 100% be going next year, and encourage anyone to, if you're in this startup space or building security products or want to invest in the space, you should absolutely hit up the Innovators and Investors Summit.
Yeah, something I was not familiar with, before seeing people posting about it, and most of it was the fact that George Kurtz was there. But yeah, I find it interesting that they had Haroon there as well. Because like that's a good kind of foil to have for that conversation, because he's famously not taken investment, though
Yep.
it has been offered. A lot of companies that bootstrap like that do get offers all the time. And yeah, it's I imagine it was a very interesting conversation having him sitting on the other side saying, yeah, you can bootstrap, but then on the other side saying, yeah, but there's certain types of things you can't really bootstrap for, right? Is what you were saying, Darwin, that people were saying.
Exactly. Yeah, there's kind of like that push pull. It depends on what use case you're building for, that allows you to bootstrap. And so, if you're building a company that's gonna solve some compliance challenges, and you need to be speaking with, say, entities that have to be FedRAMP compliant, then your
Right.
solution has to be FedRAMP compliant, and that takes a lot of time and money in order to make your solution FedRAMP compliant. Of course, that's one side of the extreme, which the founder of Clarity, and Clarity does IoT, OT security, which obviously industrial control systems, you think public infrastructure and all that, they have to be FedRAMP compliant. And the young lady there was saying, I forget her name, what the founder is, but she was kind of presenting the other side of the extreme, while Haroon was, tokens and canaries and building that is probably much lower overhead. And so there's a balance, but seeing both sides presented and kind of debated. And HD Moore, founder of Metasploit, creator of Metasploit, was also on that panel. So it was a very fun dynamic. I
Mm.
truly do wish that they one day release those, if it were recorded, release those recordings. So I think there's
Yeah.
like so much value in those conversations.
It was Galina and Tova,
There we go.
Clarity. Yeah.
Yeah, she's a
Yeah.
boss. She's a boss.
Really
Yeah.
interesting stuff, like HD Moore, it's always interesting because, like, he built Metasploit, which wasn't really a commercial business. He did end up selling it to a commercial business. And seeing what he's done with Run Zero, formerly known as Rumble, like that thing has just grown incredibly. And a lot of it just powered by the speed at which HD works, which I get the newsletters from Run Zero, and the amount of features that they're adding every month is just insane. Is that I don't know how anybody keeps that pace going for that long. It's incredible.
What does Run Zero do, if you don't mind me asking? Just a quick one or two liner there.
Yeah. So one of the things that the vulnerability management companies are not very good at is asset identification. So anybody can do discovery, right? You can grab Nmap and you can discover the hosts on a network. But yeah, I mean, everything that's IoT or industrial IoT is going to look like it's running Linux, because it is running some kind of Linux. Like, that doesn't really help me. Like, what is this thing? Like, when I was doing product reviews and I built a lab, I was using Ubiquiti equipment. And Tenable, Qualys, Rapid7 all tell me my Ubiquiti gear is an out of date Debian server. So, yeah, the version of Linux that these network devices are running on, my wireless access points and routers are running on, was Debian at some point, or is based on Debian, right? But they're very clearly not Debian servers. These are networking devices. Rumble will tell you what model it is. Not only will it not tell you it's a Debian server, it'll tell you the firmware version on it, because uh, Ubiquiti actually runs a service that you don't have to authenticate with, that'll tell you all about the device. All you have to do is know how to query the service to do it. So it's two components here. It's intended to be in the chasm space. So Exonius, Jupyter, Jupiter 1, but it started out as just a really high quality, fast network scanner. It would pull all the information you could possibly pull. Like H.D. Moore found a trick to where he can tell what brand of antivirus is running on a Windows host without an authenticated scan. Like he found some kind of trick, some kind of way he could figure that out. So like he's developing all these unique tricks that are proprietary to Run Zero, because he's pulling apart these, dissecting these network protocols, figuring out all these cool, tricky ways to do it. And it's just a really high quality asset discovery and identification tool. And now it has integrations into Active Directory, into Tenable, into ServiceNow. So now it can both push to other asset management databases information or pull from them. So it's he's turning it into the the main root of system of record you would go to get information about an asset. You can put in the asset owner information, the asset criticality information. Well,
it pulls it in. So I don't want to mislead people. You don't have to put it in. A lot of that information is grabbed through the native product, as well as the integrations, aggregated, normalized into a common data schema, presented as, like Adrian said, the system of record. You can drill into everything, what it is, where it is, what version it is, what it runs on, or what runs on it. You can look at dependencies and relationships.
And push out in some cases. So it'll actually, it'll push more information into Tenable than you currently have in Tenable. It'll help complete your data set in Tenable.
Yep.
So, which I think is kind of cool, that not all of them go in both directions, but some of them do.
Yeah.
But it's a really impressive product. They have a free community tier. I think you can scan up to 200 hosts, and I use them on my home networks. So yeah, it's pretty easy to get up and running. Yeah, you can be up and running, have your full scan done within 30 minutes before you're done listening to this podcast. I'm not
awesome.
shilling for them at all. It's just, one of those products that's so impressive that you end up being sales for that company just because you're so impressed with it.
Well, that is the way a good company with somebody who's trustworthy builds itself without the BS.
And again, that goes back to patchless patching, right? Like, this is the way to do it. Build something impressive and people will talk about it, right? Like, you'll get your marketing for free.
100%. Boom.
Boom.
Slam the gavel.
All right. Let's see. So there's a bunch of acquisitions here. The Trend Micro exploring a sale wasn't surprising because the Japanese market is having a hard time. And I found out recently that the whole .com bubble bursting was the Japanese market that started that fire. I had never realized that, but had nothing to do with things being overvalued directly. It was kind of the indirect result of something happening in the Japanese market that resulted in a sell-off in our market. So I find it interesting now. We're kind of seeing some of the same thing happening. So I wonder if that could impact the AI bubble that we think we're in right now.
Oh, let's hope.
But it seems to be affecting Trend Micro. Company's been around since 1988, one of the oldest security companies out there, and one of the original antivirus companies. And they've been owned by the same people, run by the same people from the very beginning. They used to be public on the NASDAQ, and then they're on the Tokyo Stock Exchange now. And end of an era if they do end up selling. But then we heard Tenable was looking for a buyer, and before that, Rapid7 was looking for a buyer. So just because they're looking for a buyer doesn't mean that they're going to find one.
Or in the case of Tenable, I've heard from the other side that was never true. I mean,
it was never true? Yeah.
Yeah, I heard from some people.
We do label these rumors.
Rumors, yes. Yeah. Very clearly labeled rumors, but...
Yeah. I mean, there are rumors that are getting published, so Reuters published them, so I don't know how much weight that carries.
So, and this is like looking back at the Wiz acquisition rumors and Google.
Yeah,
Somebody's playing chess.
yeah,
Um, they want this news to get out. I don't know. You know, they're like you guys mentioned 3 vendors now that have mentioned wanting to, and they're looking for buyers, and they have not quote unquote found buyers. I'm not sure. Maybe it's they're looking to see what they're valued at. Maybe they're there's a ton of things that this can serve as a measuring stick for. Um, but it is interesting and it does shake up the market a bit and it causes their competitors to think like to look in the mirror and think like, do we need an exit strategy? Like, or what's going on? Are we, nearing the end
hmm
of an era of like innovation where, the Palos and the Wiz have eaten up so much market share that everyone's looking to get off the boat, similar to what's going on in the sim space with like Logarithm, Exabeam, and QRadar kind of like all consolidating because you know Microsoft Sentinel is eating market share, Splunk has eaten a lot of market share, and it's like all these newer vendors are doing things that are leaps and bounds ahead of what like QRadar can do to innovate.
yeah,
Are we seeing the same with the Trend Micros, the Tenables, and the Rapid Sevens? So
yeah.
it's something that we need to keep poking and prodding on in the security industry. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And since we're talking market level, industry level, we're still seeing a lot of layoffs. So Cisco is doing some layoffs. Dell announced over 10,000. I think we talked last week. Intel doing like 15 to 20,000. So lot going on here with the market that's connected to it. And then Darwin, you just included something saying investors are losing patience with Azure growth. And my own um, prediction that I've been putting out there is that Copilot. I don't think Microsoft 2 years from now is still charging extra for Copilot. I predict that it's going to end up just built into the existing Microsoft 365 E3 E5 licenses. I don't know what license level, but based off of what I'm hearing from people piloting it and actually using it, they're saying it's not worth paying $360 a year for per employee. So
Yeah, there was that one headline of a an executive at a Fortune 500 healthcare co, which cut their contract with Microsoft Copilot after 6 months,
mhm.
equating some of the output to that of a middle schooler's.
Yeah,
So
I saw that. Yeah,
I don't know what's going on, but if like after an assessment and then signing of a contract and proper vetting of Copilot, that a team brought on Copilot and then 6 months later decided to cut it off after making an investment of their time and money and effort to bring it on board, then there's something truly inherently wrong with Copilot, and it's not like meeting expectations. And
yeah,
so it is interesting. It begs the question of like, are these billions and billions of dollars being thrown at AI and model development
yeah.
worth
I mean,
it right now?
you can do cool stuff with AI, but so this is what my whole talk was about at B-side San Francisco, um, where by rushing garbage to market, stuff that's not ready to market, just so you can be first to market, um, you risk killing the whole segment. You risk, people. So I just did a write up on AI history, and we've already had 2 AI winters where like the best way to get your funding for your research canceled was to use the term AI or artificial intelligence. So we are standing on the precipice of what could be a third AI winter, where we have a period of time where nobody's going to want to even hear that. Like if you have that anywhere in your marketing, like people are going to have to go out and strip it out of all their marketing and all their product references and stuff like that, because people are going to be so sick of it that it's going to be a non-starter if you're trying to sell a product.
Well, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. There was an article that was not specific to cybersecurity, but it was just a general consumer market survey on AI. And the general public is not, they don't want it. I think part of it is the creepiness factor. They don't know what it's doing, but they're also saying, why does AI have to
Transparency
be
is an issue. Yeah.
in everything? And part of that is a marketing issue because we're not explaining AI right, because we don't have much actual AI. It's all machine learning. I'm going to say that until I die, or until somebody actually does AI correctly. But consumers are saying, we don't want it in our products. We don't want it everywhere. We don't want things taking all this data about us and then spitting it back at us like it's in charge of our lives. It's this weird feeling to have it, and a lot of the times it's not helpful. So if that's any indication, the more general population, because if you think, the reverse happened with a lot of technologies that are now just ubiquitous: mobile phones,
Yeah.
tablets, cloud computing. The opposite
Well,
happened, right?
the most
Consumerization.
ubiquitous AI was never branded as AI. And because of that last AI winter that we came out of in the early 90s, through the 80s, people were very cautious, for decades to call anything artificial intelligence. So you would see terms like machine learning. You would see terms like voice recognition, NLP, anything to not say artificial intelligence, right? So yeah, it's all around us. It's everywhere, but it's not been labeled like that. So that could continue with this stuff. Might need a rebrand. All right, so there's we're not going to get to everything here today, but one of the other dumpster fires here I have were room searches at DefCon. I thought that was interesting. There's a story in here from, I think it's 404 Media, talking about got a list of what was handed out to hotel staff or security staff of things, hacking tools to watch for. Watch spelled WACH. It looks like it was very hastily put together, but um, yeah, very
So
very interesting.
who were
Looking for
they
soldering tools.
who are they entrusting to go look for this, though? Like, go through hotel guests' bags?
Well, so they
The hotel
say,
employees to conduct like kind of like room health checks, and if they during that room health check they see any of these devices, which could even be like a HDMI dongle on your machine, like they would either confiscate it or call in for additional help. There were a couple tweets about it, but in that post, yeah, like soldering machines and devices and things of that nature, which is interesting because obviously on the DefCon like DefCon vendor space, they sell a lot of like Hack 5, like Wi-Fi pineapples and things of that nature, and so the line is extremely blurry. And Katie, to your question of like who are they entrusting to conduct these searches? People who are not certified to conduct these searches or like confiscate these things. So
And what about privacy rights? Like, I mean, if they're looking
what's
for
that?
these, well, yeah, there's that.
well,
Let's not
in a hotel, I mean, they come in to clean your room every day, and there's I don't think there's much of an expectation of privacy there.
well, no, but I'd be interested to learn this, actually, because I don't know. But what is the scope of their ability to go through your stuff? Because there is some, I mean, first of all, I don't believe that the people coming in to clean my room have any interest in my luggage. I really don't. So I'm a little less worried about that. But the reality is people have had stuff stolen. But is there something that says they're allowed, if you're in their room, you're renting their room, they're allowed to go through your things? And is that the same as, knocking on doors, doing checks, and then they see all these things laid out on the bed? Great. But can they also come in and, like, that feels to me like they would need a warrant
Take your
for
stuff.
something like
Yeah, I
that.
don't know. It's a
I
good
think
question. I don't know the answer to that.
I think warrant is the right word for it. I'm not a legal expert, but that it does feel like that's something that would necessitate a warrant for confiscation.
Yeah,
Sammy just put in the Slack channel that the Resorts World hotel group would be doing daily room checks, even if there were privacy please
yeah.
signs on the door. And so, yeah, it's interesting.
I
It's
mean, do you
alarming.
I mean,
automatically give up your rights if you're on their property? I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious about this. I don't travel with that stuff, but it makes you think, like, what is the expectation, right? What's the expectation of certain, like, can they come in my room and rifle through my stuff? I wouldn't like that whether I'm at
it's probably
DefCon
safe to
or
just assume that. Yeah, I mean that there's a reason they call it an evil maid attack, right?
I've never heard that term.
Me either. But I think Dark Tangent, your boy Jeff Moss has some work to do here in terms of ensuring the safety and privacy of attendees in their own private spaces or quote unquote private spaces for that time being. Um, the security community has a lot of privacy advocates within the Electronic Frontier Foundation. I'm sure they could lend some legal hours to look into these matters. So if anybody from the EFF is listening, I truly do hope that you look into this, because for conference goers, this is very alarming, especially if you've had bad incidents and have PTSD of people going through your stuff or going into your rooms or invading your privacy. So it's not it doesn't allow conference goers to feel safe, and EFF
And
should definitely look into it, I would say.
a lot of stuff that they're looking for isn't even hacking equipment. It's just like soldering tools, prototyping tools, like um, like stuff you would expect to see in any room if any kind of like electronic hobbyist convention is going on, like a um, I don't know, not I'm sure it's not just DefCon. You're going to see this kind of stuff, so it's like a ham convention or anything like that. It's um, feel like spreading some ignorance and some stereotypes with this. So obviously, DEF CON is kind of the if it was going to happen anywhere first, it was always going to be DEF CON,
Yep.
right? Because shenanigans in history. Uh, but yeah, so going to wrap up here in just a moment. But yeah, apparently you don't even need to get into the hotel room. You just need to shine a laser through the window to capture people's keystrokes. So Sammy Kamkar is well known for some stunt hacking, putting together some interesting hacks, but um, you know, uh, not stuff that you should add to the top of your risk register that you should drop everything and go after. But still some cool stuff. We've seen lasers used to listen in on home assistants and things like that, and to trigger home assistants. So it's cool seeing research with using lasers for this kind of stuff as like a microphone, basically.
That looks pretty cool. That's a lot of effort, though. I mean, mostly, yes, he's a stunt hacker, get it, understand, but most of us aren't going to go to that level, and even real attackers aren't going to go to that level because they don't need to.
Yeah,
Yep.
no. But
It's a lot
I'm sure somebody
easier
will
to
sell.
just install some malware on someone's machine. I hate to say it, but it's
As
true.
somebody will sell some kind of laser window protection covering or something. I don't. It's called a
That's a good
drape.
idea. You want to keep your
It's called blackout
eyesight
drapes.
intact.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good with my tinfoil hat.
or maybe some kind of detector if somebody's shining lasers through your windows and an alarm goes off or something like that.
An alarm should
But
go off if someone's shining lasers through your windows.
yeah, probably. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
So
agree.
hot take we don't really have a whole lot of time for. Gartner apparently canceled SOAR, calling it obsolete. I think I don't know how much interpretation Pramod is doing on this post here. It might just be that they've moved SOAR to the trough of disillusionment, in the hype cycle that Gartner has. So maybe that's all it is. But yeah, it's I think it ended up being pretty difficult for people to implement. So there's kind of some backlash there, which is why we saw a new um, generation of SOAR tools, right? Like uh, if you ever used Phantom or Demisto before they were acquired by Splunk and Palo Alto, very different experience from using Tines, right?
Interesting. There was a lot of fuss about this at BlackHat around Gartner canceling SOAR. A lot of folks feel that it's
Oh, really? Okay.
they weren't getting a lot of funding from SOAR vendors, so they just decided to kill the quote unquote kill the category. But having used Demisto, aka Palo Alto Cortex, I more so saw it as an enrichment tool. So, say an
Mm-hmm.
incident, like I get an alert and I want to enrich it with data from 3 or 4 other data sources. I would create a workflow so that once that alert triggers, it'll go and hunt down any activity related to that EC2 instance and that user who actioned that EC2 instance, and deliver that event enriched with all of the findings from those different data sources. And so it was kind of like a enrichment tool on steroids, but I wouldn't trust it to automatically like isolate and like take a EBS snapshot and then isolate an EC2 instance or perform critical tasks like that. That I feel like that's still, in that sense, it wasn't like the really solving for the automated response thing just yet. It was more so doing the solely enrichment, and so maybe that's why it didn't like fully fall flat on its face as a category, but it may
Mm-hmm.
have paved the way for more workflow automation tools like Tines,
Mm-hmm.
which are much more thoughtful and play towards that automation much better. So first gen, second gen type of conversation. Um,
And Gartner thinks deception is dead. So, take it with a grain of salt, you know?
exactly.
What do they know?
Yeah,
All right.
they are a business after all.
Yes. And our last item here, our squirrel story, is what time is it on the moon? As we talk about setting up permanent bases on the moon with NASA's Artemis program, and other countries are planning on this as well. Apparently, time moves 56 milliseconds, or is it nanoseconds,
Microseconds.
microseconds per day faster. So days are 56 microseconds shorter on the moon, which I did the math, and at the end of the year, it'd be half a minute different after a full year. So, yeah, NIST had to come up with a standard of some way to tell time on the moon, and they've put together the math for that.
And
So
then they have a leap
we're,
minute every year.
yeah, I'm not sure exactly how they're going to handle that, but yeah, I guess it depends on what the use cases are, right? Like if you're going to have something robotic, if something needs to be very precisely timed, you need to have a moon GPS that's different from the Earth GPS because time is a little bit different.
Yeah, I was just
So
gonna ask, what's the use case for this, and like, are folks in the SOC going to have to convert moon time into UTC in order to write a detection
It was
and
hard enough
account
to
for that?
staff the SOC already, Darwin. Come on.
Build a detection for my moon GPS. Well,
and
it's
we'll
it
just
is
have
NIST,
AI handle it.
so yeah, there you go. Like, so this is
Take
56
moon time into account.
Yeah, 56 microseconds is like a negligent amount, but like not yeah, it's not enough to. I don't know what NIST is up to or what NASA is doing on
Like
the moon or like
the
what the use
latency
case is. It's
between
crazy.
between the event occurring and being written, that event being written to disk somewhere, like, is probably more than this amount, right?
Agreed. Yeah, easily.
Unbelievable.
It's a good squirrel story.
It is. Moon time, moon GPS. All right, that's all I've got for today. Thank you so much, Darwin and Katie, for joining me today in this first week post DefCon, post BlackHat. A lot of fun stuff to talk about.
Heck yeah. Thanks for having us.
All right, a big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. We will be back next week. And don't go anywhere, because after this, we have those BlackHat interviews that I mentioned at the top, at the intro.